My name is Michelle Rutkowski. I am founder of More Studio. We're a commercial architecture firm, and we design spaces for connection, discovery, movement, and rest, which are the 4 pillars of reward system strength. And I also study the reward system. The reward system has changed my whole life. And in fact, I learned about a receptor 4 years ago that made everything change. And the receptor's name happens to be the mu opioid receptor, so it's also called MORE. So this is a little confusing as we go through this. But MOREs are part of this wonderful design for our reward system and something we all need to know more about. Before I start, I'm going to start with my story. We've all had experience of addiction in our lives, in our communities, in our families. Let's see. And when I was a kid, my dad is a family physician. My mom ran the medical practice, and we grew up in a small town. And the community had a lot of suffering that went on, as you might imagine, any small town does. But my family took on the burdens of that in many ways. So I heard a lot of these stories of breakdowns, families breaking apart. There was suicide and lots of heartache. And I know you all can feel that in your own families, so excuse me. But when I got into my late 30s, I knew I had a problem that I needed to change. And I thought I had it under control, because that's what I do. I have a lot of things under control in my life. And I looked really happy on the outside. I mean, things were going pretty well for me from the outside, but from the inside, I was suffering, like many of us do, with our own hang-ups, but we don't often talk about them in public, especially in a place like this. So thank you for being familiar faces that are friendly here for this story. So addiction was not a word I wanted to apply to myself for sure, because I had it all under control. But when I started to try to cut back, I realized, holy cow, this was a lot harder than I ever expected. And I started looking for answers. And one morning, I was listening to a Sober Curious podcast when somebody came on, and they talked about a pill that would block dopamine. And this sounded really intriguing to me, like, that sounds scientific, it sounds interesting. I started researching this method, and ultimately I gave it a shot. I told only David about it, my husband. But what happened afterwards was completely unexpected. So I had thought that when I took the pill, and eventually I would stop wanting alcohol, but I also thought it was going to feel a lot like my sober days. So I had tried a lot of those. They're no fun at all. The sober days, they felt like an ache, that you kind of want something was missing. And that's kind of what I was expecting from the results of this. But what happened was totally different. I actually started falling in love again with things I didn't even know I had fallen out of love with. And ideas started coming back to me. I started getting passionate again about my work, my family, my life in general, and I could stick to things again. So I knew I was healing something. I just wasn't sure how it worked. And ever since then, I've been digging in to the science of what happened in my body and my brain. I've learned about the reward loop, how it impacts us, and it turns out that this thing that we've basically categorized as for pain and addiction, something we've been told to avoid, is nothing of the sorts. It's actually something we should strengthen. We need to respect its rhythms, and we need to learn about it. So that's what I'm here today to do. I can't wait to tell you all about it. But that's my story. And so I want to get us started by priming our reward system. So everybody's going to get up. I'm not going to make you hug each other like I said that I told David I was going to make everybody hug for 20 seconds. So just a side note, just a side note that after you hug somebody for more than 20 seconds, you actually get a burst of oxytocin and of endorphins, which helps strengthen the system. But we're going to start today with squats. So I didn't make it to the gym this morning. But we're going to start with squats. And you guys are going to do 8 squats. And afterwards, wait a second before you start. We're also going to get endorphin signaling with rest. So right after our squats, we're going to take a deep breath. We're going to breathe in through our nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and then we're going to breathe out slowly like we're breathing out through a tiny little straw as long as you can. The person who lasts the longest wins the plants, which I don't know, I'm just kidding about that. But Katie, you have the plants, right? We're supposed to have cortisol-lowering plants in here. We got to bring them in. And we're going to do that twice. So we're going to have our deep breathing twice after we take our squats. So there is actually something that's going to happen in our bodies. Our bodies are going to release BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's going to help us form new neural pathways. And it's also going to land endorphins onto the system that we're trying to strengthen in real, live ways rather than synthetic overrides. So let's do that. We're going to do 8 squats. I'm going to do them with you. And then we're going to do our deep breathing, okay? This is an experiment for me too, guys. Let's see if this works. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Finally, I made David do squats. Just kidding. Yeah, I told you I was going to call you out. Anyways, okay, let's do the deep breathing now. Okay, twice we're going to do this. One more time. Okay, that was it. Now you guys are primed and ready to learn new ideas. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. And I'm sorry you can't eat your chocolate yet. I've got a lot to cover today. I've got a little water here so I can keep going. But we're going to get through it. So I'm going to do a recap of what we talked about last time, which is what dopamine really is. It's not what you were told. It's something completely different. And then we're going to learn about the 4 pillars of reward system strength. We talked about CDMR principles, that's connection, discovery, movement, and rest, and how they impact the corporate office space. We're going to go through receptor logic, the unaddiction loop, and CDMR. This is actually the scientific way my reward system was rewired with this medication. By the way, it's FDA approved. You don't have to go to Peru or anything. Like, this is something you get from your doctor. Just not a lot of people know about it because it's a generic drug, so it doesn't have any pharmaceutical funding or backing. But FDA approved, perfectly reasonable, and we'll have lots of resources on the website to follow. Then we're going to go through a more tour through the body. This is where my mind went crazy because I found these receptors not just in our brain, but all over our bodies, doing all kinds of amazing things. The architecture of an idea, we're going to talk about how ideas form because of this system and how ideas become reality because dopamine drives us to make them reality. We'll talk about the 4 types of reward system rest, how we strengthen the system with that. We're going to do, I have a napkin sketch of a project that's actively working on CDMR for a trauma healing space that we're just starting to get hopefully off the ground very soon. And then you're going to meet Mr. Rass. And he is our reticular activating system, and that's our brain's bouncer, basically filtering reality to match what you install in your reward system. And then we're going to learn just really quickly how to strengthen and shape our reward system, and then we're going to talk about CDMR in a public innovative space. So you'll see how architecture and reward blend in ways that I never thought possible before I found this system out. Okay. So dopamine is just one part of the reward system. It's a signal of motivation or anticipation. So in our last talk, we had a small gift box that everybody got, and there was an anticipation of opening the box and seeing what was inside. But then inside was the reward. And that reward is endorphins. That's our endogenous morphine. It's what our body naturally produces to fit into the more system. That's actually what happens as the gift or reward. But both signals are really important. Their function and strength, they show the function and strength of the reward system. So we need to pay attention to where dopamine fires in our life. So here's that reward loop broken down. We have a cue at the very top here. That's the gift. We have action, reward, and then what happens with the reward is that it installs meaning and memory into that reward. So it's what drives us to come back to things over and over again. So when you understand the logic of this, you understand the logic of staying in love with something, staying engaged with things, staying connected to places, staying connected to people, staying connected to our jobs. So dopamine is responsible for a lot more than just reward signaling. It's responsible for cognitive and executive function, physical and movement coordination, goal-directed behavior, social and emotional engagement, curiosity and learning, restoration and sleep, imagination and vision. So you're going to tell me that's something I should avoid? The truth, the science is that's not true at all. So we also talked about, this is a study I brought up last time. It's a very important study because it shows us what dopamine really is doing in real time. It doesn't just, well, let me tell you the story. So they put little sensors into the the brains of finches, and they followed these finches along from days 30 to 100 as they learned their perfect tune. And around day 30, they found that these finches installed this melody in their brain that they wanted to follow. And every time they played a note between days 30 and 100, their dopamine system in their brain would fire in direct proportion to how closely the note was played to match the template. So it was just a quarter-second delay after the note was played, this dopamine signal fired, and they could track it. What that tells us is that dopamine refines our vision. So whatever we put into our brains as a template, dopamine drives us to finish that, but it gives us feedback along the way. So dopamine is a refiner. Dopamine focuses our efforts and gets us to finish things we start. I talked about Anne, my friend who runs marathons, and how she was running out of glucose. Her glucose monitor was showing 0, and as she approached the finish line, it spiked because dopamine created this cascade of biological signals that finished the race for her. So dopamine, I didn't know this before I studied the reward system so much, is a finite resource, and it runs on waves. You're not designed for constant output. You're designed for bursts of stimulation followed by natural resets. Now, you have dopamine in your pocket nonstop all the time. You have more access to novelty in a minute than our ancestors did probably in years. So we are constantly at war, essentially, with this system. But I'm going to teach you how to win that war. Okay, so there are different rhythms of reward. There are annual rhythms. These are the circannual rhythms, yearly rhythms. So this has to do with sunlight signaling. When sunlight's more available, our dopamine systems are more active. We've got a friend trying to come in. Come on in. And then when we have seasons of lower light, we have less dopamine. So that should encourage us to grow in certain seasons and to rest and renew and tend to ourselves in other seasons. We have infradian cycles. This is the monthly cycles we all go through. We talked about women having their power week of the month where we get everything done. And then for men, you are not immune to this cycle. You also have cycles of dopamine that run with your hormones. There are circadian rhythms, so that's within a day. You have higher dopamine and cortisol in the morning, and it drops towards the night. And there are ultradian rhythms of dopamine. So this is shorter than a day. This is like a 90-minute or so cycle where it rises and you need renewal. Okay. The modern world is hijacking our reward systems. We all can feel this. The synthetic override that I had on my system is just one of many overrides of our systems. We're talking about them here with scrolling, processed everything, marketing meant to capture our attention. We are constantly getting notifications. You see my wrist has been clear of a smartwatch now for about 6 months, and I don't think I'm going back because it's a constant draw to my attention. And then dopamine, which is the molecule that's meant to fuel your mission, is being turned against you. So there is something we need to learn from this system. But there's hope through neuroplasticity. This is what science is telling us over and over again, is that our brains are changeable by what we input into them. So I wanted to understand what I could input into the system to keep it strong. And I looked at the science and found that it kept coming back to these 4 key pillars of reward system strength: connection, discovery, movement, and rest. So connection is oxytocin's role in reward system strength. Those receptors live right next to our mu-opioid receptors, and they synchronize this cascade of reward that happens. So endorphins and oxytocin work hand in hand. So we need connection through each other, through awe, through gratitude, through connection with God, through connection with nature. All of these things are actual signals to this reward system. We need discovery. So I thought my drive was just like something I needed to tamp down at times, honestly. But when I learned about the system, this is how we're all designed. We're designed for drive, for discovery, for novelty, for strengthening ourselves, for growing. And that's what the role of this system is. So we can introduce novelty strategically to strengthen our reward system. We'll talk about that too. Movement. We're designed for intentional movement. That's what also gives endorphin signaling. This is what we just did today with releasing BDNF. It also lowers our cortisol levels and strengthens our signal. This is not movement done in punishment. So this is movement done in joy. And then rest, renewing dopamine signaling with default mode network activation and parasympathetic states and cortisol reduction. So you may have heard default mode network, but I've been paying attention to my brain a lot in the last 4 years. So I'm actually paying attention to what my thoughts are. And your default mode network is what starts firing when you let the notifications turn off. And what happens in our brain is we kind of go into this auto mode of iterating thoughts, right? And we need to pay attention to those because we can change those thoughts by stopping them and redirecting them. But what happens there is that's the time when our thoughts come together, when ideas start to form. So we need to activate that network very often during the day in order to solve the problems we have in front of us. Okay. So this is a corporate office space where we're bringing in CDMR principles through the office. We're making spaces more walkable, bringing a variety of seating options, and then we're also flooding in natural light because circadian rhythm signaling is so important for our reward system. Some of you may recognize this project because we're probably working on it together. We have quiet spaces for solo resets. Not all reward system resets happen with others. When we need time by ourselves during the day to reset the system. And then walkable outdoor spaces is critical for any innovative space altogether. We need spaces where we can come outside, get a little sunlight. You're not actually getting the full spectrum of sunlight when you sit in natural light inside. You need some resets during the day in sunlight. Okay, this is where I'm getting into the science. Hopefully you're all ready for this. Before we get into the science, this is when I'm going to have you take another endorphin hit if you're open to having your Hershey's Kiss right now. So you can feel the endorphin signal one more time. You're just allowed to have it now. You don't have to, but but this is when we're talking again about the reward and the gift. So this is what will assign meaning and memory. So if you have that Hershey's Kiss right now, you may want to come back to have this talk next time. So yes. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit while you're having that. This is strategic because this is the most boring slide in the entire presentation, but it's so important. So I really want you to know this, but I think it's helpful to have a little chocolate on our tongues while we do. The central nervous system, this is the network of the brain and spinal cord that carries the signals for movement and sensation and emotion through our bodies. The reward system is one part of that. It has feelings of pleasure, satisfaction, and meaning, and during motivation and reinforcing behaviors. The mu-opioid receptors are found in the brain and body, and they basically signal that we have arrived at something, that we're safe. It's a signal of love and safety. That's what the endorphins do when they land on moors. So agonization and antagonization, downregulation, and upregulation, these are things that I had to understand before I knew how my reward system actually was healed. So when you understand a mu-opioid receptor, I always do this because I feel like it's a hairy baseball mitt when I see the drawings of it. So when endorphins land on it, when it's overridden by endless endorphin spikes, this system tends to shrink in number and sensitivity, so you get less of them. That means you no longer get the signal from natural rewards because the system has been compromised or downregulated. So antagonization, that's agonization, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. We agonize them naturally through endorphin signaling. Antagonization is when it's blocked, so that's when there's a little pillow on top of that or something that stops that signal from landing. So endorphins wouldn't have anywhere to land when you have antagonization. So downregulation happens to all of our receptors when they're agonized by a synthetic source over and over again. They desensitize. So that's why days of sobriety felt so terrible to me was because I no longer had the signals to land in this system. The system was compromised. And then upregulation, the process where receptors become more sensitive or increase after they recover healthy tone. So that's when they're protected, they get to recover, and I get to feel alive again, essentially. Okay, so here again is the reward loop, and you'll see the cue happens, and that's where dopamine goes. It's that little guy with the cute-looking bikini. And it's those dopamine lands on D1 through D5 receptors, and that's what stimulates action or activity. That's every time you move, no matter what you're doing, dopamine is doing that for you. So when you came here today, it's because you anticipated reward, and you're getting it today because we're learning new things. So it's all working out. And then when we have the reward, that's when endorphins signal mores. And these mu-opioid receptors are amazing. They actually spark another wave of dopamine that tells us to keep doing what we're doing, but it also installs a memory. So now, every time we see a black box, we're going to set, dopamine's going to tell us to go back to it. Do you see what I mean? So memories are installed. The places we want to go back to are installed by mores. And alcohol impacts receptors beyond mores. So there are a lot of other receptors that are agonized during the process of drinking. It's GABA, glutamate, serotonin, delta opioid receptors. I've got a whole nother talk about DORs and CORs and mores that'll be coming. But more mu-opioid receptors, even our cannabinoid receptors are impacted. Nicotinic receptors and dopamine receptors, all of them are agonized and downregulated. That means all of those systems are desensitized when we drink. But mores are the ones that matter when it comes to making memories. So that's what keeps you coming back to it. So beyond all those other receptors, this is the one that really matters when it comes to addiction. And what naltrexone does, that pill that I took through the Sinclair method, it puts a little toupee on mores or a pillow, and it basically, for a 6 to 8 hour period, it puts a blockade on that, so the receptor could not be agonized any longer. But what happens is, and what I thought was going to happen was I was going to intentionally quit, but I gave myself the one rule that they said to give yourself, which is drink as much as you want, anytime you want, as long as you have a pill on board. And I followed that to the T. So I was drinking for quite a while with the pill, and then I just stopped being interested. Because what happens is that suddenly I had a blank slate of what was memorable and meaningful to me. So the cues, the wine glass, whatever I had as a cue before, the fridge, oh my gosh, my mouth would water when I saw the fridge in the laundry room beckoning me. I no longer got those cues anymore. And what happens was I was left with a blank slate, and I said, what do I do with this blank slate? How do I fill it up? And that's where I really uncovered CDMR principles. So when we strengthen the loop without any synthetic overrides, it looks like this. This is a strong reward loop with CDMR. So what we're doing is we're intentionally having connection. We're intentionally discovering, growing, and creating new things. We're intentionally moving our bodies with joy and not out of punishment. And we're intentionally resting our bodies on a regular basis. And those endorphin signals will keep us coming back to those rewards over and over again. This is what the system is designed for. Okay, so connection, discovery, movement, and rest are essential to protecting the reward system in a world that never stops pulling at it. This is the part that blew my mind because we aren't talking about it nearly enough. Mores are not just in the brain like I had originally thought. Of course, right? They're in the brain, but we have mores all over our bodies. They're in our bones. They're creating neuroplasticity in the brain, wound healing in the skin, immune resilience, insulin resistance, gut-brain satiety signaling, vagal regulation of the heart, bone density preservation, reproductive hormone rhythm. They orchestrate a full body system of repair, but they have been siloed and stigmatized for so long because of their middle name, opioid. And you know that there's been a huge fallout from opioids. We had opium wars to start off thousands of years ago, right? And then we had the fallout from OxyContin and all of that happens. So we have not been studying this system close enough to understand the full impact, but that's what I'm advocating for, is that we look at this beyond addiction, because this is not just a reward loop, it's a biological blueprint for health and renewal and signaling in our bodies that needs to be protected. So I promised to talk about ideas today and how we get more of them, because when I healed this system, I had ideas coming out of nowhere. I have a list on my phone of the inventions that I'm working on. So if anybody wants a new business project, come to me, I will give it to you, because ultimately the reason why I have inventions is because I want to solve something in my life. So happy to give away ideas. All right, but eureka, endorphins land and more strengthen at new ideas. So they become catalysts. The only way new ideas actually become reality is we have continuous dopamine signaling driving us along a path of solutions. So here's our 4 types of rest. And we're going to just talk about each one of those: active body, lightly active mind, active body, resting mind, resting body, lightly active mind, and then resting body, resting mind. We need all 4 to make this system really sing. So active body, lightly active mind is walking with a friend. This could be sports, playful conversations, watching a show on a treadmill. So keeping your mind occupied while you're moving your body, right? This means you're actively using your cognitive function and you're actively signaling dopamine along the way. So what this does is it gives you, it releases endorphins, your cortisol lowers, your BDNF rises, you have slow wave dopamine, and that creates background idea integration. So Katie and I have actually been integrating that into our leadership time. So we actually had a visioning session on a lake recently, because we understand that this system is something that we can enhance, and we can actually come up with better ideas when we're in movement and in nature. Okay, so resting body, lightly active mind. So this is when we're sitting still, basically, but we're doing something that kind of keeps our mind moving. And this is a lot of times what our work is. We're sitting at a desk, we're kind of solving things. You get little dopamine hits here or there. So most of our work, it fits into this category, and it should, because we want it to be joyful. So these are things that we can do during those times. Now, sometimes our work requires a lot of dopamine. For me right now, as I'm presenting to you, I'm using a lot of it, right? So I'm going to need to rest after this. And that's what I've built into my reward rhythms now. But when we have lightly active mind, we increase endorphins, we lower cortisol, and then we have ideation and flow. So this is when you're painting or you're just kind of letting your mind wander during these occasions. We have resting body, resting mind. So this is meditation, prayer, awe-inspired stillness. This can happen with others in oxytocin and safe touch when we're resting with others. And this is a time for neural pruning. So it's basically like resetting the hard drive on our computer. We just turn it off momentarily. Now, in these times, those ruminations and your default mode network will still and quiet if you can get this right. And that happens a lot more easily the more we train the system. But we want, on occasions, for that time when our DMN turns off and we go into that still meditative state. In fact, Thomas Edison, he used to sit in his chair with ball bearings in his hand, and he had a metal plate that sat right underneath him, and he would try to take a little brain nap to get new ideas flowing, but he held those because he didn't want to fall totally asleep, because he knew that was the magic. The magic was in the spot between consciousness and unconsciousness, that moment of deep, still rest. That's what we call non-sleep deep rest. It happens in lots of different ways we can get there. So I've tried to integrate this now intentionally into my days. David calls it nap time, but I swear it's not. I really do meditate, honey. Okay, so active body, resting mind. So this is when we have forward motion, sensory resets in nature. This is when we're alone, by the way, because we want our mind to wander. We want our default mode network to start solving those ideas for us. And if we can prime this system with a sense of gratitude, so before we go out on our walk, we kind of reset our brains and we say, this is the vision I want to have for this walk, this is the problem I want to solve, but I want to come from a solution place. We can actually come up with solutions along our walking journeys. In these states, endorphins bind to mores, There's safety, calm, and insight. We have gentle breath. And it grows new pathways, and BDNF actually fires. So what's happening is when that BDNF fires, you're creating new neural pathways that solve these ideas. So this is the untapped resource for new ideas. This is where I find all my ideas. I also find them between sets at the gym because I do a working set and then I take a rest. It's the perfect place, especially when you have a beautiful gym like I do with lots of access to natural light and views. That is the perfect time for ideas. I come up with them a lot in the gym. In fact, probably this whole presentation was done between sets at the gym. So fractal patterns are really important to this. They're found in nature. They've been shown to reduce stress by up to 60%, and they lower the cognitive load. I'm not going to read this whole thing because we've got a lot to cover, but you can kind of read it there. New ideas land when they're encoded as rewarding. Okay, so this is our napkin sketch version of a healing project. So this is for women who are coming out of trauma, and their program is already working closely with connection, discovery, movement, and rest. They're creating programs where they give classes for women who are coming out of difficult situations, and every time they take a class, they get a credit to use in their store. And so it's perfect reward loop logic here. So every time they take a class, they learn something new, they connect with someone, they get rewarded. And in this case, what we did was, it was a very small lot. Ultimately, there was not nearly enough parking. This is the third floor, and we put in a walkway around the entire outside of the building that would have dappled light and fractal patterns. So this would be a place where the people that were in the care core over here, they would have direct access to those outdoor pathways so they could walk and heal along the journey. There's a lot of transparency built into the design so that there's a sense of safety and openness. We have flexible spaces. We have an admin and event space, and childcare is right off of a kid's garden. And in the strength training rooms, the moms get to see their kids playing, so there's a sense of safety. So as they're getting strong, they get to see their kids playing outside. So we can actually design connection, discovery, movement, and rest into the places that we create. So I also want to point out this is not just for healing people, that the administrators of this facility are doing big things. They're carrying a lot of burdens. They also need these reward system resets through the day. So this isn't just isolated to some people. Everybody needs this type of space to work. So the offices for the administrators are right off of the same walkway. Okay, so here's a test. What do you see? Some of you see a heart. Does anybody else see a bikini top? Because I don't know. So it depends on, and of course you see a heart, but it depends on what our reticular activating system is telling us to keep an eye out for. We've got a few seats over there too, I don't know. So this is the last important piece of the reward loop that I want to tell you, and then we're going to end with an innovative project. This is the RAS. It's very important to understand. So what it does is when you install an emotive vision is what I'm calling it. So when you have a plan for the future that you say, I have meaning behind this, and you really imagine yourself there, the feeling of it, how you'll feel. For example, I'm writing a book about this. So what I'm actually doing to make this happen is I'm spending time visioning what the book will look like, what it will feel like in your hands, how you'll feel it, how you'll feel uncovering the knowledge and understanding more about each other and ourselves. So I'm visioning that along the way, and when I install that with emotion, my body naturally signals myself through dopamine to come back and fulfill that vision. So you can do the same thing with pretty much anything in your life. In fact, you're doing it no matter if you know it or not, because these systems are always active. Whatever we install as emotionally relevant starts our RAS to filter out cues to align with that vision. Then dopamine fires where it's needed. So meet Mr. RAS. He's a pretty cool guy. He's a bundle of neurons in the back of our brain, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it. He's the director of selective attention and perceptual gatekeeping, aka Mr. RAS. His department is the Neurological Optimization Division, NOD for short. He reports to the conscious mind only when properly trained. So he is known in office as Mr. Rass. He's the brain's elite chief of security and executive filter. He operates nonstop at neural speed. Mr. Rass is responsible for scanning approximately 1 million bits of information every second, and he brings you the 120 bits that are most important, that align with your most emotionally charged goals, beliefs, fears, and desires, otherwise known as the emotive vision template. He's not just a sorter, no. He's a sculptor of subjective reality. So Mr. Rass is pretty important, and we all need to know how that works. And I'm going to tell you about Katie. Oh, here's Katie. She's coming back. I'm so glad she made it back for her story. Yay, Katie! Yes. Okay, so this is actually a picture of Katie in our homeless era for Moore Studio. So we were in between offices, and we were in desperate need of some chairs during this stage. And so I want to tell you how her Rass filtered for a solution for us. So yeah, we were about to move upstairs, and we had 2 weeks. So we had ordered some chairs on a long lead, and we didn't get those in yet. We needed 6 chairs, maybe 5, I forget, 6. And so one day she was walking through her office, and out of the corner of her eye, she spotted 6 boxes, the same size as chairs, and she went straight to them, asked the question, and sure enough, they had ordered 6 extra black chairs that fit into her office perfectly. So what I'm trying to tell you is that she had installed an emotive vision that she loves a good deal. I know her because I've known her for 20 years. She's like the deal queen. So she had already built this anticipation of finding a great deal, you know? And then as she walked through space, she walks through boxes every day. There are at least 17 boxes all over the place, and there was a lot of moving going on. But her eye caught that and said, I want to find out if that's the solution to my problem. So I'm telling you, you're doing this all day long, no matter if you know it or not, and we can shape this system. So this is the reward system training. We're almost at the end, guys. I can't believe it. Okay, so we have strengthening the system. That's what we do with connection, discovery, movement, and rest. And then we shape the system with CDMR2. So I'm introducing this for the first time. It's cognitive dopamine mapping and rewiring. So this is when we cognitively install emotive visions so that dopamine maps to where we want them to land. So this is where we build our vision and our values into our reward system. So I can't wait to tell you more about that. This is about recoding motivational pathways, and that's where ideas will start to come to you to solve the problems in your life if you have any. I'm sure we have no problems, right? Nobody has any problems in their life, but we want to also come to solutions first. So that's why we always have a positive emotive vision to start with. That's what gets us moving in the direction we want to go. Okay, so this is a project where we are looking at making it the most innovative space in all of the land. And you can tell it's lacking a little bit of innovation. You see the wood here doesn't have any grain on it. It's just basically a sea of red. Obviously some dated interiors here. This is the lobby space of the Peoria Council Chambers. Some of you may have been in this space before. This is the inside of that space. Gorgeous to behold, I can tell. The blue carpet, I know, has seen better days. So obviously it's in need of a makeover, but what kind of makeover can we put into the space to make it actually innovative? Because we were tasked by the mayor to make it the most innovative space we could, and he had an idea to open up the sidewalls to let in natural light, and we couldn't agree more with how that would turn out as a more innovative space. So here's another picture of the existing space, and here's the new lobby of the Peoria Council Chambers. And you'll see here we have a huge art piece in the lobby space, and that's really important. Art is essential for our reward system signaling, so please stop eliminating art from the spaces that we inhabit. They're very important to signify meaning and memory. So we took their symbol and abstracted it, and we actually created a routed out texture. So textures also enhance reward signaling. This is a wall you can go up and touch. And then novelty sparks reward and meaning. So we've built in color changing LED lights to go into this art piece so that every time you come, you may experience something a little different. So discovery is part of what makes us want to come back to spaces. And then we also have some symbolism here, so symbolism still matters. We have lights that come up and over. This is to signify people coming together with their ideas and to get us on the same path to solutions. We also have a lot more transparency. You can see those wide open doors, and with the new advances in AI security, we're going to be able to make our spaces a lot more transparent, thank God. So we will have this happening in a lot more of our public spaces.
That lighting fixture's cool too.
Oh, thank you for the lighting fixture. The lighting fixture is actually, he wanted a copper dome in the space, and we said, let's do it, but let's do it a little differently. So we have a dome of copper lights that give us one of the 5 C's for Arizona. So symbolism still matters. And here's inside the space now. We're opening up the sidewalls, and in between this corridor on the outside that used to be closed off, we've installed some beautiful panels here. Jason has gotten the rendering just right to make sure we can understand how this would work. But as somebody's coming up to start their meeting, they walk past this facility in this space, and they'll get a vision of where they're about to go. So this also enhances the reward signaling and priming of the system for the people on the council. And then we have done a few other things here. We've intentionally left some of the original textures and stone in the space to give further reward signaling, give your eye somewhere to rest and kind of solve some problems in the space. And then when you're seated here, we have natural materials brought back into the space. We don't have room to put in plants, although maybe I could get permission after this talk, I don't know. We love plants in spaces because plants lower cortisol and they help with us keeping our minds open to new ideas. So when we want new ideas, we cannot be limited to a box with 4 walls. We need to literally think outside the box. It helps with those signaling. And on the back of the chairs, we have natural materials, so we're bringing in wood there so your eye has a place to work on natural fractals while you're in the space and thinking of solutions together. So all of that comes together in the space for the most innovative space in all the land, I hope you can see, just thinking through these principles. And we've also opened up the ceiling there, so exposing the structure is another part of that. So this is how we're bringing CDMR principles into more innovative spaces.
Mm-hmm. Were there security concerns that you had to address? Because when I think of council chambers, I think a lot of times that's why they're all kind of dark and gloomy. So
yeah.
I'm curious how you were able to mitigate that, but also make it look cool and have all the light.
We do have some very secure spaces, and we found that other council chambers around the area are solving that through just police presence instead, and just using different strategies. So it's not always about just blocking the path of somebody coming into the space. So yeah, we've talked a lot about that, and there's different solutions. We've got some integrated bulletproofing and things like that integrated into the space as well for additional security. Sleek integrations, so. And then even the back of house spaces. So I want to encourage anyone who's designing spaces or thinking about the places that are the rest spaces between our work sessions, is that having them connected to natural light is also really important. So in this case, this is a break room, and we're connecting it to that view corridor where we're bringing in natural light. This is the council about to break down the walls in Peoria. So this will be a space you can actually walk through and feel the effects very soon. Okay, speaking of ideas, I thought this would be a great first tattoo for David. I told you I was going to call you out. Yeah. Okay, but anyway, I just want you to remember that you need to strengthen your mores. Take care of them. Know you have the system. It's really important. It's important we teach our kids that they have the system. It's important for our communities, for our businesses, to all know that this is a system that can be strengthened. So this is my advocacy efforts. And the reason why I'm telling you all now is because I want to make connections in a place where this can make a difference. Because when 3 million people lose their lives to alcohol use disorder every year, that means in the time I did this presentation, there was over 340 people that lost their lives. So this is an urgent message. And I am going to try to get it out until the day I die. These are the few things that I'm trying to speak on, and I'm aiming to connect to the right people. And I know there's going to be connections even from this room today that will get us connected to the right people for this mission. So reward system literacy for individuals, organizations, and leaders. We want to make the science of motivation, satisfaction, and resilience as common as nutrition literacy. It's the most important system that's driving everything we're doing, so why not? More science and clinical education beyond addiction, so teaching every clinician the mu-opioid receptor, how it shapes and heals burnout and chronic disease. Naltrexone awareness and protocols, the use of blockade timing and evidence-based applications to restore more tone. To advocate the FDA for receptor-informed prescribing guidelines and protocols that adjust the current timelines or guidelines from a once-a-day pill to a timed, effective intervention. Research for a generic molecule, because there's no backing to this molecule. They gave it out free of charge to the world. It doesn't have anybody to run a commercial during Super Bowl. Advocating for more funded research for this molecule is very important to me. Protecting the next generation, understanding how constant, instant gratification at our fingertips rewires young reward systems, and we can act early to intervene. And then the built environment, so designing spaces, homes, schools, cities that nourish the reward system instead of wearing it down. I know that there's a lot of hope in this system, and there's so much science that is just coming out, so I can't wait to share it with other people, and hopefully we'll have this available for everyone to share beyond today so that it gets beyond these four walls. And that's it, guys. Thank you for coming to my reward system project. Thank you. Okay, does anybody have any questions before we get into anything else? I'm an open book, so yes.
Real quick, so the number you mentioned was for alcoholics. So you weren't including like drug addicts or overeaters.
Exactly.
So many addictions.
So many addictions. Gets bigger and yes, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Solve that for like.
Yes, so that pill is being used actively in opioid addictions, and it's available in an injection form that happens once a month. So depending on how the doctor works with you to prescribe it for whoever it is. I have resources on the website, my Dopamine Blueprint, up live today. I actually got it done, Kristen. So on mydopamineblueprint.com, there is a resource page that has access to the pill and more information about it. Yeah, it's definitely made a huge difference for my life, and I know it will for others as well.
So Michelle, you said getting in, speaking with the physicians and doctors. What's the best way to do that, like to make that connection?
Well, I'm talking with universities right now to try to see if I can get connected with the people who can make a difference with the FDA timing. So one of the biggest problems with this is that doctors, they see it in their Journal of American Medicine. I have an article that says you prescribe this as a once-a-day pill. But what that does is it blunts reward signaling every day. So there's no compliance to it, and it's not receptor logically trained. So once you understand the receptor, even just seeing this video, a clinician would clearly see how it works and understand that the timing is very important for the application. And then there's also a whole resource for low-dose naltrexone, which is taking 1/50th of that dose as a low dose to strengthen the system outside of that. And there's a whole research trust about that. That's influencing a wide range of conditions. So I've got resources to the LDN Research Trust on there as well.
And the video you mentioned is on My Dopamine Blueprint?
mydopamineblueprint.com. Yes, up live. There's a few things on there. Yes.
I just want to say thank you for being vulnerable
Thank
and
you.
sharing your story. I think it takes a lot of courage to do
Appreciate
that.
that.
And I love that you're using your personal story to help educate the rest of us, because we all have friends and family that are dealing with that, and just also leveling up what you're doing in the architecture world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. And you know, I didn't really have a choice, because here's the thing too. When I talk about up-leveling the architecture business, because I knew I was so passionate about this, I had to blend them together in order to stay passionate about my job. So it was really kind of a win-win scenario. To blend your passion and your purpose is just magic. So I'm really excited to be able to have a chance to do that. Yes.
Can you give us an example of like the reward system for a child, like someone who isn't addicted to
Yes.
anything?
So I have 3 kiddos. We have 3 kiddos, and we are constantly dealing, we don't have this down yet, by the way, but we're dealing with reward systems in our kids that we're trying to train. And ultimately, we see them addicted to their screens, and they have these instant dopamine hits that they get when they're on their screens that come every few seconds, from YouTube scrolling to Roblox. Oh my gosh, have you seen a screen that has Roblox on it? It's like an arcade. It's times 10. They also are connecting on there too. So there's this whole social network of connection. So how we kind of think about it in our family is that we try to aim to have things that are connection, discovery, movement, and rest focused. And we have a cycle of that. So are you connecting with your friends? Sure, hang out on your screen, play Fortnite with your buddies. Then we're going to move our bodies. Then we're going to rest. Then we're going to discover something new, learn something new. As long as kids stay engaged and they're excited about the next thing, that's really when you can tell how sensitive a child's reward system is and whether or not they need a reset. Because we all need these resets. I'm advocating for a few screen-free days, but it's a pull that we constantly get in our pockets for screen time and beyond that. Yes, Jason? Oh, sorry, Jason. Nap time, I'll give you that. I mean, maybe.
We are like right at time.
Okay.
I know there's so much more. Like she was worried that she's like, I don't know if I'm going to get to everything. There's so much more that she knows, and we're lucky as a team to get this from her every day, and it's been an honor.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.